Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, and welcome to the first video of 2022. And today we're going to be taking a look at a stone cold classic of solo adventure gaming. And that is, of course, Barbarian Events from Dwarf Star Games. Now, one of the coolest things about this game is that it is completely free to download and print. Now, it is not in public domain, but the new owner, who is Reaper Miniatures, has given permission to distribute freely a couple of games from Dwarf Star. I believe they got a bunch of games in like a package deal that they purchased. And so you can go to, if you just saw Google Dwarf Star Games, you can find a link to download a zip file containing everything you will need for Barbarian prints. This particular version that I am playing here is kind of an updated version 2 version that is available on Board Game Geek. And it incorporates all of the errata from the original game and some slight tweaks. I've heard that this is like the best version to play, but both versions are perfectly fine. So just get the version that is easiest to get or that you want to play. And you don't really need to print out a lot of stuff for this game. The only things that you will need are, you will need this rule book here. You will need a events book here. And then depending on the version you get, you will have a map that you can print out. So I printed out my map here in color. This is kind of like the updated map. And I just kind of taped it together with Scotch tape to make my map. You can also print out, this is from the newer version here, the updated version. And this is a page to keep track of your followers, because as you are playing the game, you are going to be traveling the land and you can hire different people to join your party and to help you accomplish your goal. And so I just recently hired a swordsman for 2 gold per day, so he is in my party. Then you can also have here this sheet here, which is your normal character sheet for your barbarian. And your barbarian, you are playing this game as a barbarian named Kal Arath. And you will keep track of your combat skill, your endurance, and your wits and wiles here. You can keep track of the things you are carrying. You will keep track of the days of the week and how many weeks pass, because you need to beat the game within 70 days. You can keep track of your gold, how much food you have, and then if you don't have enough food, your starvation value there. Additionally, you can also print out these handy sheets that will help you when you are traveling and when you are searching, and what kind of events you are going to have as you travel and search. The different hexes that you're going to be moving through are going to be represented by different terrain. So you have like countryside and farmlands, forests and hills, deserts and on road, swamps and mountains when you're crossing a river, when you are airborne, and then when you are searching ruins or when you find treasure. These nice little handy sheets can help you out there. So let's read a little intro to the game and then talk about it in general. This game probably needs no introduction, but every time I say that, I always find that there's quite a few people who maybe don't know about a game or not. So I try to not assume. So here we have, the game is pretty interesting in that you kind of learn the game as you play. And the more you play the game, the fewer times you're going to have to consult the rules. So when you are starting off, just kind of trust in the game to teach you what needs to be taught at the time you need it. Just follow the prompts and you will do okay. So when you first start off the game tells you to turn to the events section to paragraph 1. And this says that evil events have overtaken your Northland's kingdom. Your father, the old king, is dead, assassinated by rivals to the throne. These usurpers now hold the palace with their mercenary royal guards. You have escaped and must collect 500 gold pieces to raise a force to smash them and retake your heritage. Furthermore, the usurpers have powerful friends overseas. If you can't return to take them out in 10 weeks or 70 days, their allies will arm and you will lose your kingdom forever. Now consult rule, paragraph 201, to determine your starting attributes, 202 of yourself as the Barbarian Prince, and then return to this event and read the paragraph below. To escape the mercenary royal guard, your loyal body servant, Ogab, smuggled you into a merchant caravan to the southern border. Roll 1 die to see where the caravan takes you, while poor Ogab faces the wrath of the royal guards back home. So, at the beginning of the game, you are starting in the northern territories, which are actually going to be off in this direction above the map, and you are going to start in a random hex along the very top edge of the map there. And that is kind of your starting point is going to kind of dictate a little bit about how your game is going to go because of the way that you have to progress to the south. And one of your first major hurdles is to get across this river. There's a river here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a river that runs along the northern border of the map. And if you do not cross that river by the end of your first day after your escape, well, then there's a chance that the mercenary, the royal guardsman, will capture you. And so it's very important to cross that river. And as people who have played Barbarian Prince know, moving from one hex to the other is easier said than done. It is very easy to get lost in this game and to get stuck in a single hex for a long time. So that is kind of like your first goal that you want to do, is escape from that northern border. So as we saw, the game tells you to, at certain points during the event book, you're going to be told to turn back to the rules, and the rules are separated and organized into paragraphs, like rule paragraph 201, 202, 203, and so forth. And the first rule, paragraph 201, it tells you a little bit about your character. It tells you how to your starting stats and your starting wealth. And then you go into 203, into the daily actions section. And rule 203 is kind of your main section for the game. This is the paragraph that you will be referring to mostly because it tells you what you can do from turn to turn. And like I said in that opening paragraph, your goal is to acquire 500 gold and take that back to your kingdom to raise an army to overthrow the usurpers and reclaim your family's throne. I have never won a game of Barbarian Prince. I have heard that it is possible to do. I recently just read an interview on Tor.com between two gentlemen, and one of them said that one time they played, they won on the very first turn. They got really lucky die rolls. They found a treasure that had 500 gold in it, and that was it. Game over. They won. But that rarely happens. Usually this game ends in the death of the prince, the Barbarian Prince, or time runs out. It can be a very difficult game, and most of that has to do with the die rolls. If you are not a fan of randomness and of luck, this game probably is not for you. This game relies, like 99% of this game is all about rolling dice and seeing what happens, looking up results on tables, consulting tables in the book. Every once in a while you will have a choice to make, but usually that choice ends with just rolling a random result on a d6 and seeing what happens. It's a lot of luck. It's a lot of trying your hardest in the small ways that you can to mitigate that luck, but just kind of going with the punches, rolling with the punches. That is kind of like the motto of Barbarian Prince. But at the beginning of each day, you are going to be able to take a couple of actions. The main action you're going to be doing is traveling. So let's do a little example here. So recently, so far on this adventure, I started up here. I crossed the river and I made my way down to this town here called Cummery. And while I was there, I actually came across a thieves guild, and I was able to go on a theft on a heist with them, and I actually got 200 gold. So that's probably the most gold I've ever had this early in a game of Barbarian Prince. So I'm not doing too shabby. I only need 300 gold more to win the game. And I have hired a swordsman, so I'm now down to 189 gold, which I have calculated over here on this chart. But I have decided after the heist, I escaped and I did not pay the Thieves Guild a 20% fee, so I am not welcome in this town anymore. I'm kind of on the run from the Thieves Guild now. And so I am trying to come over here. I want to go and I want to explore this ruins over here. And so I am on my way over here. So I think I was right here. I am on day 1 of the 3rd week, and that's kept over here. We have our day column and our week columns. It is very easy to get lost, and I spent about almost an entire week just trying to get from like 1 hex down to here. It took me a very long time because it's very easy to get lost. And I should probably try to find a guide somehow, because a guide can help you. But right now I am in a countryside and I want to travel into a forest. So here I am in the countryside, and to get through this hex I need to do a lost check. So my daily action is traveling. And I need to, if I roll a 9 or higher on 2d6, then I am lost. So let's see what happens. A 5. Okay, so I was not lost, so I can progress to the forest. But I have to also now consult the forest table to see if I have an event when I enter that hex. So on a 9 or higher, I do have an event. And 3. Okay, so no event, so I can safely move into that hex there. So I am now in a forest. So at the end of the day, what you have to do is you have to feed your barbarian, you have to feed any hirelings that you have, and you have to feed any mounts that you have. So right now I have 1 barbarian prince, I have 1 swordsman, and the swordsman is mounted. So if my barbarian prince also had a mount, we can move at a faster speed. But when some people in your party are mounted and some aren't, you have to go with the slowest travel. So the swordsman is kind of, traveling a little slower with me since I'm on foot. But so you have to feed your party, and to feed your party you have to keep track of your food. So I have a food supply over here, and so I would need 1 food for the swordsman, 1 food for the horse, and 1 food for my barbarian. However, the forest here says fodder yes, and that means that the animal can go off and graze on its own. So the horse can take care of itself with food. So that means I need 2 food from my supply to feed the swordsman and the prince there, the barbarian. So I'm going to go down to 7 food. At the end of my day, I can also hunt. You are allowed to hunt in places that say you can hunt. So you can hunt in a forest, while you cannot hunt in the desert. So that makes sense there. So to hunt, you're going to take 2 of your values here. So you're going to take your combat skill, which my combat skill right now is 8, and you're going to take half of your endurance rounded down. My endurance is 9. Endurance is basically hit points. So right now I have a hunt value of 12, because 8 plus 4 is 12, and you roll 2d6 and you subtract 8 from 12, gives me 4. So I found 4 food. So I have 7, so I now have 11 food. So I can keep track of that like that there. You will need quite a few little tokens to keep track, or you can just do it on pencil and paper. Now you are supposed to keep track of encumbrance with food and certain things. I almost never do, just because I don't find that it adds much to the game. I hate keeping track of encumbrance in games, and rarely does it add any amount of fun. I know it's supposed to add to the survival aspect of this game, but I try to just say that, unless I'm carrying like hundreds of pieces of food, I don't know. I usually don't care about it. I find the game hard enough without having to also bookkeep the amount of food. So that would be a whole day's worth of action right there. Other things you can do on a turn is you can rest in your current hex, and that allows you to heal wounds and also improve your hunting results. So if you really need some food, you can rest and do some scouting and better hunting. Of course, you can travel. You can search for a previously placed cache. So if you are carrying too much, there are ways that you can like bury things, and you can keep things in certain hexes, but then you have to search. You have to remember where you buried them, where you hid your items. And then if you are in certain hexes like farms or cities or towns or roads or castles or ruins, there are various things you can do in those places as well. So you can seek news and information. If you are in a town, a castle, or a temple, you can seek to hire followers. If you are in a town or a castle, you can seek an audience with the local lord. If you are in a town, a castle, or a temple, you can submit an offering in a temple, or you can search ruins if you are in the ruins. And that's what we're trying to do now, is to get to those ruins over there. So let's see if something more eventful can happen on a follow-up turn. So right now I am in a forest. I am traveling. I'm going to go ahead and travel to this countryside there. So in the forest, I am lost on an 8 or higher. Okay, so I am not lost. That's good. I am moving into a countryside. So I need to find my countryside chart here. And so let's see if I have an event when I move into the countryside. On a 9 up, I have an event. 7, let's say that was an event, because I just want to see if something fun can happen. So let's say that we were traveling from this forest into this hex here, and we were going to have an event. Well, then you kind of you consult this matrix here. So we're going to say the pink die is the column and the yellow die is the row, or vice versa. Okay, so we have 1 and 4. Okay, so we are told to turn to event paragraph 6 because we have encountered a dwarf. All right, so let's see what happens with the dwarf here. We're going to turn to the event book, and we are going to turn to paragraph 6. It says you encounter a dwarf warrior with a combat skill of 6, an endurance of 7, and a wealth of 21. So there are wealth values, and that kind of dictates how good of a treasure they are going to be carrying, how much they are worth as they're like kind of like their net worth as an adventurer. So a wealth code of 21 is pretty high. I think my wealth code when I started the game was at a 1, and so I hardly had any money there. So there is a pretty good chance that this dwarf is carrying some treasure. Okay, first select one of the 3 options below: talk, evade, or fight. Then, before rolling a die to resolve that option, first roll 1 die to see if he is alone or accompanied by friends. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm going to talk to the dwarf. Okay, so we're going to talk. Now let's see if he is alone or with a companion. 2. The dwarf is alone. Okay, so the dwarf is alone. So now we're going to, if the dwarf warrior is alone, add 1 to the die roll. So we're going to add 1 to this die roll now. And that is 2, 3. Okay, so we talk to him and we find out that he is a looter. So we're going to turn to rule, paragraph 340. So there is a lot of flipping back and forth between the 2 books. So I prefer to put my book in a spiral, in a binder here, so I can lay flat open. All right, 340, he is a looter. The dwarf the characters encounter look as if they are in need of money. You can let them pass, encounter ends, or try to convince them to join you. I'm going to try to convince them to join me. If you try to convince them, roll 1 die. If your wit and wiles equals or exceeds the die roll, they will join you. Okay, so mine is 6. I have a wits and wiles of 6. So whatever I roll, it's going to be cool. So they are going to join you. They will remain as long as they get an equal share of any new gold you acquire. Each gets at least as much as you. If you deny them their share, it is as if you failed to convince them to join you. See below. Oh boy, okay, so maybe the wealth of a 21 actually showed that the dwarf was greedy. And so if he joins me, he is demanding a 50% cut of all gold we find. And if we fail to pay them, they might attack us when they leave the party. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do that because it is always important to have a good traveling party in this game to help with combat. And so I'm going to write down the stats here. Let's see, the dwarf had a combat skill of 6. So I keep track of a combat skill here with this blue. So we have a combat skill of 6. And they have an endurance of 7, which I will keep track of with this. Endurance of 7. This is a dwarf there. And a wealth of 21. And they aren't getting paid per day. They are getting paid based on how much loot we find. So we need to remember that. So I'm just going to write here that they're going to take half of all gold found. And then again, we need to remember that if we ever don't pay them, then we need to turn to, what was that? Certain paragraph here. They were a looter, so we need to turn to R340 if they ever leave the party. Okay, so that was that turn. So now at the end of that day, we have to hunt or feed and hunt, I should say. We have quite a bit of food. We have 10, we have 11 food. So now we need to feed the barbarian. We are in a countryside, which the countryside does allow for the horse to eat for free. So the horse is going to eat. So we need to feed the barbarian, the swordsman, and the dwarf. So we need 3 food. So that's going to take us down to 8 food there. And we can go ahead and hunt. So 12 minus 11 is 1. If you ever roll a 12 on your hunt die, then something bad happens to you while you are out hunting. And so right now we found 1 piece of food, so we can move that up. So there are a lot of different events you can discover. You can discover a swordsman, a mercenary band, a farm, trolls, wolves, goblin keeps, great hunting cat, a wizard, abandoned mines, elven towns, fortress, an elven fortress. As you can see, like there are certain races that you will encounter more frequently in certain types of terrain, like elves and pixies you will find in the forest more than you would find like in the desert or something. But in the desert, you might have a better chance at discovering some ruins, or you might get exhausted, or maybe some abandoned mines, a poisonous snake. When you're on the road, you're going to encounter bandits a lot. You're going to encounter more like kind of like wandering adventurers. In the swamp, you'll probably be finding more poisonous snakes or an impassable morass. And when you're crossing rivers, you can have a raft. You can find a raftsman, all kinds of different things. And you can also have mounts with wings to where you can have airborne adventures. And so overall, I think this game is pretty fantastic. It's pretty easy to learn, but like I said, just kind of trust in the game to teach you as you go and you will be fine. I do recommend this kind of updated version that you can get on BGG just because it does have all the errata already fixed within the text, so you don't have to check something. It's also slightly rebalanced and just updated just a bit, and that was done with a couple people on BGG, and I can't remember the guy's name who did this reworked version. Todd something. I had it somewhere. Now I cannot find that information, unfortunately. But it is available on BGG. I'll put a link to the BGG version and to the Dwarf Star, the original version. But yeah, this is kind of like an ultimate slow quest game. It's really fun just to leave set up. It doesn't take a lot of room. It doesn't take a lot of components. You can even have fewer things on the table if you just use the map, the book, and pencil and paper. Because all of these you can also encounter in the book. You don't need these. Or you could just print these out as pages and keep them in here. Keep them in your binder so you don't have to have extra things. But I thought it might be fun just to have these extra cards like that. There is not a lot of text. Even when you encounter something that might be a little more complex, like this knight on the bridge here, it's more of just an adventure node. It gives you the barest elements you need to have that encounter. but then it is kind of up to you as a player to embellish and to connect the dots from one node to the next while you are playing. So this is a game that I think also benefits from journaling. And so then you can have more details. You might want to name the different characters you came across. Maybe you could jot down the hex number that you met them in. For some reason, if you wanted to return, you could say that, you know, things that happen in certain hexes are persistent. So you could keep a journal of different events that might have happened in one hex or another. A lot of the things, because of the dice rolls and because of the way that events always trigger from a D12, you will go a lot of turns without ever having a random encounter. And so you will play the game a lot and not see a lot of the stuff in it. So it has a ton of replay value, just absolutely a ton of replay value. And depending on the direction you go and the types of terrain you move into, well, then that could completely change the flow and the feel and the style of the adventure that you are having. And ultimately, I think this is one of the better solo games, especially if you are into sword and sorcery fiction. This really does give you that sense of playing a kind of an old school, old style sword and sorcery adventure. And it does come highly recommended, especially since it is free and legally free. That is so cool. And it doesn't take a lot to DIY, and it just comes highly recommended. And that is Barbarian Prince. So, all right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.